Today we are going to be talking about il Museo Nazionale Etrusco di Villa Giulia, or the National Etruscan Museum located in Rome. The museum's main structure is a 16th century villa built between 1550 and 1555 CE. The museum was originally called Villa di Papa Giulio because it was commissioned by Pope Julius III, a member of the wealthy Del Monte family who held a fair amount of power and land in Rome, including the land that the villa was built on. In the 17th century, it was used to house guests of the Vatican, most notably Queen Christine of Sweden in 1665. Around the end of the 17th century, the villa fell into decline until it was acquired by the new state of Italy in the 1870s. The main architect for the villa was Jacopo da Vignola, who worked alongside Bartolomeo Ammannati. Vignola and Ammannati were the final architects, but Pope Julius III first consulted with Giorgio Vasari about his plans for the villa. The decorative elements on the facade of the villa, like the friezes and the window lintels, were done by Pietro Venale da Imola and Taddeo Zuccari. The columns in the facade of the villa are divided into two orders, composite above and Tuscan below. The difference in the two orders can be seen in the capitals. Notice the simplicity of the Tuscan capitals compared to the acanthus leaves and scrolls of the composite ones. In addition to the main structure of Villa Giulia, there is Villa Poniatowski, which is separate but close to the main museum. Villa Poniatowski was restored to provide more space for Etruscan art from Umbria and Lazio. Through the atrium of the Villa Giulia is a courtyard where the Temple of Elatrium stands, built by Count Adolfo Cozza in 1891 as a reconstruction of an ancient temple that was excavated in 1889. There is also an nymphaeum, a monument dedicated to nymphs and spirits that was copied into the villa in the 16th century. Villa Giulia is one of several national museums dedicated to Etruscan art and history. The Etruscans were an ancient culture in Italy that have few surviving written records but a lot of art and artifacts. The few written records we do have point to the emergence of an identifiable language and culture by the year 700 BCE. Most of their records and art were found in tombs or remnants of temples. Etruscan culture started between the Arno and the Tiber rivers and eventually spread up to the Po River in the north of Italy and the modern-day region of Campania in the south. Etruscan culture flourished from the 7th until the 2nd century BCE during what is known as the Hellenistic period, when they were conquered and fully integrated into Roman culture. Their main art medium was pottery, from which they took inspiration from Greek styles. They used a technique called bucchero, which possesses a shiny black surface that resembles metal. Though the bucchero pottery merely resembled metal, the area where the Etruscans lived was also rich in metals, so they had an abundance of materials to create art and practical objects. They were particularly skilled with bronze, and many bronze art and artifacts still survive. Etruscan art and culture were very appealing and interesting to the Italians, and there was a lot of archaeological digs focused on the Etruscans, which gives us the abundance of artifacts we have to study today. Part of the reason for the interest in the Etruscans was after the unification of Italy in 1871, there was a movement to provide Italy with a shared history and culture because it had previously been made up of different kingdoms and city-states, each with a unique identity. Etruscan art was particularly useful in this endeavor because the Etruscans had been spread across Italy, and thus was something the former city-states had in common. This idea, the National Etruscan Museum at Villa Giulia, was created by archaeologist Felice Barnabé in 1889. Its aim was, and still is, to provide the nation with a place to learn about its earliest, somewhat unknown history. The museum fills nearly every room in the villa, and the artifacts are organized by context and find spot. The main archaeological find spots are Volci, Cerveteri, Bisenzio, Veo, and Pirgi. The find spots are where most of the art in the museum was found, usually in burial sites called necropoli. Within the museum, many of the glass cases contain artifacts that were all found in the same necropolis and have labels indicating when the necropolis was excavated as well as when the artifacts themselves were buried. In addition to the archaeological sites highlighted in the numerous galleries, the museum is also home to a few private collections, the most well-known being the Castellani collection. The Castellani collection began in 1860 after other famous Italian collections had been sold to various museums across Europe. The collection was passed between the family until it was given to the Italian government in 1919 for the museum. The Castellani collection has some significant jewels of personal adornment, contributing to the study of Etruscan jewelry, as well as an impressive selection of pottery. Moving on from the collections, let's talk about some of the major attractions of the museum. The Apollo of Veii is a larger-than-life-size polychrome terracotta sculpture. It was likely on the roof of the Temple of Minerva, which was constructed at the end of the 6th century BCE. As the title states, the sculpture is of Apollo, who is wearing a chiton. Apollo is striding forward with one arm outstretched and a smile on his face. This is an incredibly dynamic sculpture, especially when compared to the ancient Greek Choros figures, which were much more stationary. The way the chiton drapes over the body, the hair over the shoulders, and the muscles in the leg are all quite natural. The Apollo is one of the most well-known sculptures from this museum, and yet it is one of the last things you see following the recommended museum path. Our second masterpiece, located in the middle of the museum, is the Pyrgi relief. Pyrgi was an ancient coastal Etruscan town located a few kilometers northeast of modern-day Rome. The ancient temple there was adorned with these painted terracotta figures made in 470 BCE. The sculpture was found when it was struck by a farmer's plow. Because of the damage done to the relief by the plow and also the passage of time, the relief was in 200 fragments, which were carefully reassembled during restoration. It is connected to the story of two brothers fighting over the ancient Greek city of Thebes, where both brothers had help in eventually killing each other. The relief is displayed with an illustration of the figures and a description of the story, as well as a 3-part video that plays right next to it. The video does not have a screen, but is projected on the wall on either side of the relief and uses intentional lighting to either highlight the relief or have it fade into the background. The light occasionally falls on specific characters in the relief to explain who they are and the story that is being told. The video works with the relief instead of taking over the space or being off to the side. The third masterpiece is the sarcophagus of the spouses, made around 520 BCE. This is actually one of two versions, the second one now on display at the Louvre in Paris. The sarcophagus is a large ceramic funerary urn made out of terracotta. The terracotta is burnished, leaving a shiny sheen meant to preserve the sarcophagus. At the time of the making of this video, part of the lid was in restoration, and so the legs of the spouses are missing, and you can see some of the support structures inside. The spouses are on the lid, relaxing on cushions that seem to give way to their weight. They are very dynamic in their movements. Their arms move, gesture, and extend into our space. The figures are not entirely realistic, their hair and facial features are fairly stylized, and their limbs are elongated to cover the entire sarcophagus. We hope you have learned more about Etruscan art. Thank you for watching. We also encourage you to visit the museum so you can explore on your own and gain new perspectives on Etruscan art.